30,000 years ago, the night does not forgive mistakes. You are crouched by a dying fire somewhere in the frozen wilderness of Ice Age Eurasia, and every sound past the firelight could mean the end of you. A snapped branch. A low breath in the dark. You are a hunter, yes, but out here, in the black and the cold, you are just as often the hunted. Then you see them. Eyes. Not one pair, but several, catching the last orange light of your fire and throwing it back at you, cold and steady. The gray wolf has arrived, and it did not come to negotiate. It is faster than you. It hears things you will never hear. It can smell the fear leaking out of your skin from a mile away. In almost every story like this one, in almost every night like this one, across almost every continent on Earth, this ends the same way. It ends in blood. But on this night, something breaks the pattern. The wolf does not lunge. It sits. It watches you from just beyond the light, and for reasons neither of you can explain, you do not throw your spear. Instead, you toss a scrap of meat toward the shadows. The eyes blink. The animal does not vanish. This single, absurd exchange of stillness for scraps is the opening move in one of the strangest transformations in the history of life on this planet. It is not just the story of an animal being tamed. It is a full-blown biological revolution, one that rewired the brain, the body, stop, and the behavior of an apex predator until it became something that now sleeps at the foot of your bed and loses its mind with joy when you walk through the door. Today, we are going to dig into the real, messy, 30,000-year mystery of how ancient humans actually created dogs. We will talk about the survival of the friendliest instead of the fittest, about a genetic experiment we ran on ourselves without even realizing it, and about how, somewhere along the way, this monster of the tundra became man's best friend. Before we go further back into the Ice Age, quick question for you. Do you think humans went out and chose the wolves? Or do you think the wolves chose us? Drop your theory in the comments, because by the end of this video, the answer might surprise you. And if you're the kind of person who likes pulling apart the hidden mechanics of how humanity actually became human, this channel, Half Evolved, is built exactly for you. Hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, and join us for these deep dives into the strange, accidental history of our species. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it means we get to keep making videos like this one. All right, let's get back to the fire. For a long time, the story we told ourselves about dogs was a comforting one. Some brave ancient hunter finds a litter of wolf pups in a den, scoops them up, raises them by hand, and slowly trains a loyal companion out of a wild animal. It is a nice story. It has been told in 100 documentaries and 1,000 children's books. There is just one problem with it. It is almost certainly not what happened. Here is the inconvenient truth about wolves that most people never learn. You cannot tame an adult wolf, and you cannot fully tame a wolf pup either, no matter how early you take it in. Raise a wolf from birth, bottle feed it, sleep next to it, give it every ounce of affection you have, and it will still, at its core, be a wolf. Its instincts do not disappear because you loved it. Zoos have learned this the hard way for a century. Wildlife rehabilitators know it intimately. The romantic image of a caveman single-handedly taming a wild wolf through patience and charisma is the kind of idea that, in reality, tends to end with someone missing a few fingers. So, if humans did not walk into the forest and domesticate wolves on purpose, what actually happened? The leading theory today, the one most of the genetic and archaeological evidence points toward, is both stranger and more elegant than the old story. The wolves may have domesticated themselves. Think about what an early human settlement actually looked like to a hungry animal on the outside. It was not just a campfire and a few tents. It was a factory of leftovers. Cracked bones, stripped carcasses, fish heads, scraps too small or too awkward for humans to bother with, all of it piling up at the edges of camp. For an opportunistic scavenger built to exploit any available food source, that pile of human garbage was not a threat. It was a jackpot, sitting there, night after night, requiring nothing dangerous than proximity to a fire and the animals standing around it. But not every wolf could take advantage of that jackpot. Only a very specific kind of wolf could get close enough to actually eat. The large, dominant, aggressive wolves. The ones you would picture as terrifying alpha predators generally kept their distance. Humans with spears and fire were not worth the risk to them. But there was always variation within any wolf population. Individuals sitting slightly further along the spectrum, toward calm, toward curious, toward less panicked by the sight of an upright ape waving a burning stick. Those were the wolves who could inch close enough to the firelight to actually get fed. And getting fed mattered. A wolf that could reliably scavenge from a human camp had an easier time surviving harsh winters than one that had to hunt everything itself. Easier survival meant more chances to breed. More chances to breed meant more offspring, carrying that same lower fear, higher curiosity temperament. Generation after generation, without a single human ever making a conscious decision to domesticate anything. Natural selection was quietly filtering the wolf population, favoring the calm over the aggressive, the bold but friendly over the bold but dangerous. Scientists call this process self-domestication, and it means that in a very real sense, we did not build dogs from scratch. Wolves built the foundation of dogs themselves, using us as the raw material for their own evolution. Here is where the story takes a turn that even most scientists find genuinely startling. Once a population starts being selected purely for tameness, strange things start happening to its body, not just its behavior. This phenomenon has a name: domestication syndrome. We actually have direct experimental proof of how fast and how dramatically this can happen. And it comes from one of the most underrated science experiments of the 20th century. In the 1950s, a Soviet geneticist began a long-term breeding program using silver foxes, working under a political system that officially treated genetics as ideologically suspect. Undeterred, he selected foxes for exactly one trait across each new generation: how calm and unafraid they were around humans. Nothing else. Not size, not coat color, not shape. Just tameness. Within a handful of generations, decades rather than millennia, the foxes did not just start acting friendlier. Their bodies began to physically transform. Their ears, once sharp and upright like any wild canine, started flopping. Their tails began to curl instead of hanging straight. Solid silver coats broke out into patches of white and brown. Their skulls became rounder, their faces softer and more juvenile-looking. Their reproductive cycles even shifted. Nobody had bred for any of these traits directly. They arrived as an unplanned side effect of selecting for a calm temperament, revealing that somewhere deep in canine genetics, the switches controlling fearfulness are wired to the same switches controlling ears, tails, coat color, and skull shape. Select for one, and you accidentally drag the others along with it. This is almost certainly what happened to those bold, camp-scavenging wolves. As natural selection filtered for calmer temperaments generation after generation, their brains shrank slightly. Since a life of scavenging near humans required less of the raw aggression and hypervigilance a wild wolf needs to survive. Their ears began to soften and flop. Their coats began to shift in color, and their faces began to change in a way that would eventually produce the single most devastating weapon in the entire animal kingdom: puppy dog eyes. Dogs possess a small facial muscle above the inner eyebrow that wolves simply do not have. Researchers have named it, somewhat clinically, the levator anguli oculi medialis, but its function is anything but clinical. It allows a dog to raise its inner eyebrows in a way that makes its eyes look larger. Its expression look sadder, more pleading, more unbearably sympathetic to a human observer. It is, quite literally, a muscle that evolved because it worked on us. Dogs that could make this expression triggered stronger caregiving instincts in the humans around them, got more food, more attention, more protection, and passed that same muscle on to their puppies. Over thousands of years, the wolf's face was slowly reshaped into a tool for emotionally manipulating humans, and we never stood a chance. It goes deeper than facial muscles. Dogs read us in ways wolves biologically cannot. Point at an object, even one a dog has never seen before, and it will immediately look where you are pointing. Wolves, even those raised by hand from birth with intense human socialization, generally fail this simple test. It is not something dogs learn through training. Puppies with almost no prior human contact will follow a pointing finger on their very first try. Something in their genetic wiring has been shaped over thousands of generations specifically to interpret human gestures as meaningful information. And then there is eye contact. In wolf society, staring directly into another wolf's eyes is not affection. It is a threat, a prelude to a fight for dominance. But dogs evolved to do the opposite. They evolved to seek out our gaze, to hold it, to treat the human face as a source of comfort and information rather than a challenge. When a dog and its owner lock eyes, both of their brains release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that floods a mother's brain when she looks at her newborn child. Every time you catch your dog staring lovingly up at you, you are not imagining a connection. You are chemically bonding with another species in real time, using a hormonal pathway that evolution originally built for parents and infants. Once this bond had taken root, something remarkable happened. These early proto-dogs were not just camp scavengers anymore. They became partners, and the partnership was mutually devastating to every threat either species had ever faced alone. A wolf-descended animal, living at the edge of a human camp, came with senses no human possessed: sharper hearing, keener smell, faster reflexes, an ability to detect an approaching predator or a rival human group long before any lookout ever could. In exchange for warmth by the fire, guaranteed food scraps, and a level of safety no lone wolf population enjoyed, these animals became an early warning system, a set of extra eyes and ears watching over sleeping children through the most dangerous hours of the night. The advantage went both directions on the hunt as well. A human hunting alone has to rely on stealth, tools, and endurance. A human hunting alongside a proto-dog gains an animal that can track scent trails invisible to any person, that can run down prey at speeds no human could sustain, that can corner and hold an animal until the hunters arrive. Study after study on modern hunter-gatherer groups that still hunt with dogs shows dramatically higher success rates compared to hunting alone. Multiply that advantage across tens of thousands of years, across entire populations spreading into new and unfamiliar territory, and you start to see something bigger than a nice story about a boy and his dog. You start to see a survival strategy there is a serious, ongoing scientific argument, not a fringe idea, that this partnership may have tipped the scales in one of the most consequential extinctions in human history. Neanderthals, close cousins of ours, were powerfully built, intelligent, and had thrived across Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. But as far as we can tell from the archaeological record, they did not have dogs. Homo sapiens, moving into the same landscapes around the same period, did. An ally that could smell danger before it arrived, chase down prey no human alone could catch, and guard a camp through the night, might have been exactly the kind of edge that let one species expand and thrive while a very similar species, without that edge, eventually vanished. And the genetic evidence tells us this partnership was not a one-time fluke either. Multiple independent lines of DNA evidence suggest that something like domestication may have happened more than once, in more than one region, among populations that had no contact with each other. East Asia, the Middle East, possibly parts of Europe. It looks less like a single lucky accident and more like a pattern, as if two species kept finding each other useful, over and over, wherever their paths happened to cross. We also know how deep this bond ran emotionally, not just practically, because of what our ancestors did with their dead. Beginning roughly 14 to 15,000 years ago, long before anyone had planted a crop or built a permanent settlement, dog remains start showing up buried alongside human remains, carefully arranged rather than discarded. Not stripped for meat, not tossed aside as waste, positioned deliberately beside the human body, sometimes with a human hand resting directly on the animal, as if placed there in the final moments before the grave was closed. These were not utilitarian animals being buried out of practicality. These were companions, mourned and honored in death, exactly the way a beloved family member would be. For thousands of years after that first uneasy truce by the fire, the forces shaping proto-dogs were still largely natural ones. Tameness got you fed. Fear got you nothing. But somewhere along the way, the balance of power shifted, and humans stopped being sapaz beneficiaries of a wolf's own evolution and started becoming active architects of it. Once early humans realized that these camp-following animals could be shaped on purpose, not just tolerated, everything accelerated. A family that noticed one dog was unusually good at flushing prey out of thick brush would keep its puppies and encourage them to breed with each other. A family that needed protection more than hunting help would favor the largest, most alert animals in their group instead. Multiply those small, local, deliberate choices across thousands of communities and thousands of years, and you get an evolutionary explosion unlike anything else recorded in the natural world. Hunting dogs bred for speed and scent. Herding dogs bred to move livestock without harming them. Guard dogs bred for size and intimidation. Sled dogs bred for endurance in brutal cold. Even small companion dogs, bred for nothing more practical than warmth on a wealthy household's lap. The sheer speed of this transformation is almost hard to believe. In roughly 15,000 years, a blink of an eye by evolutionary standards, the same base wolf body plan, honed over millions of years of natural selection for one very specific job, running down prey on open ground, was taken apart and rebuilt into wildly different shapes. A greyhound streamlined into a living arrow built purely for speed. A bulldog compressed and reshaped for controlled aggression in close quarters, somehow still finding room for an oddly cheerful personality, despite looking, structurally, like a small, sad loaf of bread. A dachshund stretched low and long, to chase prey directly into burrows underground. Nowhere else in the animal kingdom has a single species been reshaped into such an enormous range of sizes, skull shapes, coat types, and temperaments, while still remaining, genetically, essentially one interbreeding species. Most of what we now think of as fixed, ancient dog breeds are actually far more recent than people assume. The vast majority were formally standardized only in the last 2 centuries, during a period of intense fascination with controlled breeding that produced strict, written blueprints for exactly how a given breed should look, move, and behave. What had started as a survival partnership between 2 desperate species in the Ice Age had, by the modern era, turned into something closer to a competitive art form, judged in show rings rather than tested in the snow. And this brings us to right now, to a relationship that would be utterly unrecognizable to that first cautious wolf circling a human campfire. Dogs today live inside our homes rather than at the edges of our camps. They sleep in our beds instead of the frozen dirt outside a tent. They are named in wills, celebrated with birthday parties, given their own social media followings. Somewhere in the world today, a dog is living a more comfortable, more secure life than the vast majority of humans who have ever existed. And it has absolutely no idea, because it just found an old sock under the couch, and that sock has become the single most interesting object in the known universe. We spend staggering amounts of money on veterinary care, specialty food, and grooming, sums that rival national budgets in smaller economies. When our dogs die, the grief that follows is not some watered-down, lesser version of human grief. Neurologically and emotionally, it closely mirrors the grief we feel for a human family member because, as far as the oldest, most instinctive parts of our brain are concerned, that is essentially what a dog has become. None of this was planned 30,000 years ago. A hungry, slightly less frightened wolf edged toward a pile of scraps, survived a little better than its bolder siblings, and passed that timid curiosity on to its pups. Multiply that single accident across 300 human generations, and you eventually arrive at someone paying $40 for a bag of grain-free, salmon-based artisanal dog food, and feeling completely justified in doing so. From that single hesitant animal edging toward a Stone Age fire, we now have over 340 recognized dog breeds scattered across the modern world. An almost unbelievable range for a species that started as one cautious scavenger circling one human campfire. But the truly extraordinary part of this story is not what humans did to wolves. It is what wolves did to us in return. They made us safer. They made us more successful hunters. They may have quietened our nights, warned us of danger, and helped carry entire populations of early humans into landscapes they might never have survived alone. In nearly every other case of animal domestication in history, cattle, sheep, horses, chickens, the relationship was overwhelmingly one-sided. We captured them. We penned them. We bred them for our own purposes, and they had no real say in the matter. Dogs were different from the very beginning. They were never simply captured. They walked toward us on their own, generation after generation, adapting their bodies and their brains specifically to understand a species that was not their own. And in turn, without ever intending to, we adapted right back, emotionally, neurologically, culturally, until we built an entire relationship neither species could have designed on purpose. So, the next time your dog falls asleep across your feet or stares up at you with that ridiculous, heartbreaking expression while you eat dinner, or completely loses its mind with joy At the sound of your keys in the door, remember what you are actually looking at. That is not a modern pet performing modern tricks. That is 30,000 years of two species, slowly, clumsily, accidentally choosing each other over and over again until neither of them could quite imagine living any other way. Thanks for exploring this journey through deep time with us here on Half Evolved. If this kind of hidden history fascinates you the way it fascinates us, check out our other deep dives on the channel, and we will see you in the next one.